Well, I'm going to go ahead and welcome everybody to this. I know we have people still in the waiting room, people that are going to be jumping in. I'm going to try to make my screen smaller just so I can kind of focus on Melton there. So if I do not acknowledge anybody else in here, it's not because I don't like you or anything like that. I want to try to focus on my friend. Melton and I have known each other for, I want to say about 10 years now, give or take. We worked together for a little bit in Louisiana. Melton's still down in Louisiana. And it's interesting. I like to say that the church that we were at was about 500 people when I started to attend. And I was interning, cutting the grass. And by the time I left, I was on the executive team, and there was about 10,000 people in the church. And I leave it at that because maybe some people will give me credit for that instead of Jesus and other people doing some things. When the reality is I was probably just riding on the coattails of a lot of people and of what the Holy Spirit was doing. But in doing some research through Wesley Seminary, we had to focus on small groups, specifically in our local context, in our local church. And as I was diving into that, I noticed the moment when our church went from about 2,900 people to 9,500 people was the time we really started taking small groups seriously. And we had tried to start small groups several times. It was a program we knew we needed, but it was one we could never really get off the ground. Melton and his wife, Catherine, I'll give her credit because we should. But they came in and they really made it a culture. And I could pinpoint, just in the research and the data, I could pinpoint the moment they took over small groups ministry to the moment that we started actually growing. We were stagnant for about 10 years. And the actual growth and exponential growth, and even the spiritual depth, really happened the moment we handed over some reins to Melton and Catherine. And so I couldn't think of a better person to talk about small groups. I know a lot of people are thinking about that. Maybe they have a small group ministry, maybe they're wanting to start one. But January, February is a great time. And I just wanted to bring Melton on so I could ask him some questions and people could listen in, or anybody else can ask those questions as well. Just a reminder to those that have joined or are joining, feel free to, we're recording this, feel free to put some questions in the chat, and myself and Pastor Janet, who's our assistant DS, will facilitate this discussion with Melton. Melton, you want to give us a little intro about who you are, where you're from, and just your maybe ethics and philosophy of small group ministry?
Absolutely. So, great to be here. You guys look awesome. Get to see your faces. That's nice. When we have the cameras on and everything. Glad to be here. Love talking small groups. I've been in ministry, probably all my life. It feels like, right? I was called as a young kid. I led my dad to the Lord when I was around 6 or 7 years old. It's just always been a part of me, seeing what God can do. I love it. From the great state of Alabama, and there's a church on every corner. There's literally, I can take you to some intersections where there is a church on every single corner of that intersection, right? And I've always wondered, a big part of me has been church growth. I mean, one of my, you say just interests in my life, great interest in my life, is the dynamic of the church and how it grows from the big C church to the little C church. I've studied all the different theologies and all the different why this denomination is like this and why this denomination is like that. And I think it all church growth kind of boiled down to two things: leadership and discipleship, right? No matter what they were preaching on Sundays, those church dynamics that were growing boiled down to leadership and discipleship. when I got introduced to small groups, Tim, I don't know if you know, I was in one of the associate pastors, no names, small group. That was my first experience with a small group. And me and Catherine is my beautiful wife of 17 years, 15 years. Can't do the math, but we went out of obligation because they said we need to be in a small group, and we hated every minute of it. And it was miserable. So then they brought me on staff to lead small groups. I go, okay, well, I've got to go become a student of small groups, and I got to go find small groups that are being done at a high level. People love it. It's working. It's accomplishing the two core things that need to be accomplished: leadership and discipleship. So we went on a mission, and to the point where they said, all right, Mel, what's your first thing? They'd ask me, what's the first thing you're going to do? I said, I'm going to stop doing everything. All right. I'm going to do a thing because I don't want to keep doing what's not working. Give me 3 months to go find out what works. And that's what we did. I mean, I wore pastors out all over this great country of ours, until we put together what we formulated was, this is how it's supposed to work, how it's supposed to operate. We looked at churches from the most liberal type of small group environment all the way to the most restrictive type of small group environments. And there was goods and bads in there, all of it. The people we saw doing it the best were Highlands. Highlands obviously has unbelievable small group ministry. Rick Warren's church out in California, can't think of the name of it now, Purpose Driven, that doing unbelievable things. And there was a lot of places doing unbelievable things in small groups. All those pastors, they're men's groups leaders, they probably still know me by name because I hounded them to death, because we wanted to get this thing done right. And we saw how effective it was, how an effective tool it was to develop people, right? Which is, I think, if you're called into ministry, that's what you want to see happen. And we all have, I tell people all the time, they say, Melton, how many people can you disciple? I go, not that many, right? Jesus Christ effectively discipled 11 people. And so my capacity to do is a lot less than his. But inside of a small group ministry, that gets multiplied. So we just went to work hard on doing that, and we were able to see just a ton of growth. I mean, when we started, we had, I think at that church at the time, we had 30 small groups. When we left, we had over 900. And it was, we learned what it was supposed to be like, and how how you take people, and this thing is built with people, right? And I think that's the key element. And I know a lot of people miss it, is because you look at the systems and the structures of it all, and you go, I need to get my systems and structures in place. And yeah, that's a big part, but you can't miss the people part of it. So we really went to work with the people on getting that done. I hope that was
great. Let me ask you, because I think one of those questions that we talked about is, like, where do I start? What if I'm revamping, or if I'm starting with a clean slate, never done it before? But before that, I think you and I would agree, and this question actually came from Pastor Janet, of like, what are some non-negotiables that a small group coach or small group leader should communicate to other leaders in the ministry? Like, what are some non-negotiables? What are some values? Some churches might say, well, there's certain membership commitments that you probably need to adhere through and stuff like that. But give us some of those, again, principally what you think worked, Absolutely, at least in your context, and maybe that translates into others.
Absolutely. So I'm teach y'all kind of my theory, and I invented this. So it's the water flow theory. Okay. Meaning water is going to flow from one end to the other uninterrupted. If I have a pipe, right, and I pour water on this side of the pipe, it's going to flow out the other end of the pipe. If I put obstacles inside of that pipe, it's going to restrict the flow of water. Right? Small group ministry works the same way. People are the water. And if you notice inside your church, you can herd people in different directions. And if you open things up, people show up and all those things. The more restrictive you make the environment, the less people show up, the less people that can be a part of it. So I'll give you some examples. So I've seen everything in small group ministry, from very liberal to, hey, come pick up your kit, you can be a small group leader, right? All the way down to, you have to be at church for the last 5 years, you have to have been showed up regularly and blah, 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 right? To be a small group leader. Which one of those churches do you think has the most small groups? Very simple. So it's the same. So now you have to, as a church, go, what are our non-negotiables? And you pull them all in a basket, and then you just start pulling them out left and right. Okay, maybe not this one, maybe not this one. We've boiled down to, I know, inside of the ones I like the most. And like I said, these are my non-negotiables, but they don't have to be yours, right? And you can make yours less than this or more than this. Want them to be a part of the church, our small group leaders. Want to be a member of the church. Want to be saved, obviously, right? They're living their life for Christ. Want to be a member of the church. Want them to have gone through some sort of assimilation of the church. Not a long one. Our assimilation process was 4 steps, and you can knock it out in a month. But to give them background knowledge of the church, it's called the heart and vision from the pastor. I think that's the most important part. If you took out the other 3 steps, as long as they can get the heart and the vision from the pastor, this is what because that's ultimately the pastor is why they're there anyway, right? They believe in that pastor, they love that pastor, they love his message, they think he's funny, whatever the reason is, but you want them to be able to get that vision from the pastor, and then meet with someone one-on-one. So this was kind of like a big non-negotiable for us. We didn't care who you were. You needed to meet with somebody so that you can start being connected, because that small group leader is a connection point, right? If I've got the main pastor, and then the main pastor has associate pastors have the small group pastor, and then the small group pastor has their coaches, and the coaches have their leaders. Well, I want that's the connection. The leaders have the people in the group. So that's a funnel, right? Up to the pastor. If there's an issue inside of the small group, if the small group leader can't handle it, they've got a coach. If the coach can't handle it, they've got the pastor. If the pastor can't handle it, he's got the associate pastor, all the way up. So I want to, a big part is I need to make sure there's that connection. They've met with somebody, they've talked to somebody knows where they're at in life, right? They're assigned a coach. How are you doing? What's going on in your life? Tell me about yourself. How long have you been walking with God? All those things. What do you like? What don't you like? What's your passions? Right? I need to get them connected in the process. And that's a huge step. The vision from the pastor and the connection, probably the 2 biggest, are non-negotiables for me.
So there's like the initial probably data form of like, not a job application, but there was, you receive the information that they want to be a small group leader. But then there's also the follow-up interview meeting one-on-one, which is part of the connection. That person may not be discipling the small group leader, but it's an anchor point in their life, which I appreciate. Before we get into the small group ministry, just some maybe even the details of how to start one, or what you did to kind of revamp a little bit more. When you're dealing with the kind of the values and the philosophy of it, how do you utilize groups or even the ministry itself to connect people to their purpose and then activate that purpose?
Great question. So small groups, I mean, if you want your church to really get hopping, you jump into small groups. And this is why we start small groups based off of what is that person's passion? What is their interest? What is their God-given abilities? What are their talents? What is their calling in life? And those things is going to start the small group. So we'll have, and I've seen, like I said, churches, there's a lot of churches, and if this is your church, forgive me, but there's a lot of churches that will go, here's what we want to do, right? We want our church to get better in their finances, which is a great thing. So we're going to have all of our small groups do this Dave Ramsey, the one Dave Ramsey, right? We're going to have all of our small groups do that. So then now I've got all my small group leaders, and now this is what I want them to do. And most of them don't have any interest in it, don't have a passion about it, aren't called to do it. They'll go through it because the pastor asked them to, right? But that small group is not going to be one that's going to be duplicated. Why? Because the leader's not engaged. Versus if I said, if that small group leader goes, man, I just really love finances. I'm in debt myself. I want to get out of debt. I wish the other people could be. I know what a burden debt is, blah, 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 blah. And I go, man, sounds like you need to do a Dave Ramsey group. Now that group is going to be exciting. It's going to be fun. The leader's passionate. He wants to be there. He's doing it because he feels called to do that. And that group's going to duplicate. Right? So I need to start. If I'm starting a group, I don't tell them, hey, this is what you need to do. This is the kind of group you need to have. I go, what is it you like to do? What is it you're good at? What do you feel passionate about? What kind of people are you trying to reach? Who has God called you for? Like, and watch this. And as these people start to turn on, right? So if I take somebody's gifts and talents and push them into a group around their gifts and talents, they become an attractor. So more people are likely to get into that group, right? The people that are joining that group get more out of that group because the leader is excited about it. I do the same thing with you've all got serve teams and dream teams. If I have one of my dream teams, which we call, those are like our small groups as well, right? So if I have one of my leaders come up and say, man, I got a great idea on how to take up offering. I go, all right, what is it? Let's give it a shot. Go for it. Here's what happens. Because it's their idea. They put all their heart and their soul and their purpose and their power behind it, right? They're going to make it work because it was their idea. Same thing's true with the small group. If they say, look, man, I want to, my marriages, my guys are putting a thing on me in marriages. I've got a great study, love and respect. I want to do that book with people, blah, blah, blah. Let's go get it. They're going to be excited about bringing people to their group because it's something that's pouring out of them versus a directive that they're just given, right? Then it becomes a task more so than a mission.
So I'm picking up a few things from what you're saying, that even knowing you for 10 years and kind of being a part of that process, some things are clarifying for me that I want to kind of speak to and then let you hit on. When it came to starting over, you have to talk to these people, and it seems like there's an intentionality on your part to communicate with people, ask them some of these questions when you're talking to them, and then also there's a freedom for them to come back and communicate to you from anything from. I think this is a great example from an usher saying, hey, I want to do this a different way. I mean, there was a guy at one of our campuses that had I wanted him to lead our usher team because he was the best usher we had. And he said, I'm a horrible leader. And I said, but you're the best usher I have. And he said, then give me every new usher you have and I will train them. But I don't want to lead anyone because I'm a horrible leader. And so oftentimes what I was doing was saying, you're the best at what you do. You're in charge of everybody else. It's two different giftings. And he wasn't excited about that, or a lot of other people weren't excited about that. And so it really opened my eyes to say, let people who are excited about stuff do it. And I mean, I think Paul talked about it, let those lead, let those give, let those who teach. So just speak to me about, again, start over with, I have 30, we shut it down. And then what did you do? Because you had to start somewhere with tapping people on shoulders.
Yep.
You don't seem like you have a problem talking to people, but maybe some pastors might be not as extroverted or intentional with what they're saying.
Exactly.
So walk me through your mindset process without manipulating people. How did you get them to become small group leaders?
It's people will do what they want to do. I just need to find out what they want to do. So I have friends who ask me to go play golf, and they don't call me going, they don't begrudgingly call me going, man, you want to see if Melton wants to play golf today? I don't know. He's usually busy, blah, blah, blah. Let's give him a call. They don't do that. They know I love to play golf, and I will adjust my schedule to go play golf. Right. So it's not a tough ask. So it's not a hard ask. It's a hard ask to ask somebody to do a group that I want them to do. It's not a hard ask to ask somebody to do a group they want to do. Here's what you need to understand. People are grouping up anyway. Right? Your people in your church, they've got their Friday night bowling guys going out and bowling. The girls are getting together for the coffee clutches. You got your moms are meeting up at the park with the kids. You've got friends who are getting together and going through book studies. People are grouping up anyway. We just got to show them how to turn that into ministry, right? And so when we got started, this is what I did. I looked at my life. One of the pastors, I was a pastor out of Montgomery, Alabama. When he was revamping his small groups, he got the kind of the bug, and he goes, okay, I get it. I got it. This is what small groups are to me. I got it. He went home, he told his wife, he said, honey, we're starting small groups in the church. I'm going to have 6 small groups personally. And his wife's like, are you nuts? Right? When are you going to have time for your family? When are you going to do all this small group stuff? He goes, well, I pray every morning. So 3 times a week, I'm just going to invite people to come pray with me at the church. I eat lunch every day. So one of those times, I'm going to invite some guys to come eat lunch with me, and that'll be my small group. We'll talk discipleship and fellowship and that sort of thing. He said, I play racquetball every Friday. So I'm going to invite some guys to come play racquetball with me. I'm going to whip them pretty good and pray for them, send them home, and we're going to have a good time doing it. And he said, and then me and you have our Thursday night couples group that we already do. So my life is not changing. I was already grouping up anyway. I already had opportunities to group up anyway. I'm just going to make them intentional. So if you're restarting, this is literally what we did. I took myself and I got some of our leaders, right? You already have leaders. You already know the people I'm talking about. They already, we got a new mission, they're in, right? I got my network of leaders together, which was about, I think we had about 20 or so. Okay. And I said, and I gave them the kind of the new purpose. Hey, what do you want to do? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to have a golf group on Fridays. I'm going to have a men's breakfast that we're going to do. And I've got my couples group, right? Those are my groups. My life wasn't changing. I was already going to play golf. I was already going to eat breakfast. And me and the wife, we were looking for an excuse to hang out and do some things anyway, right? So my life wasn't changing. So I said, I need y'all to do the exact same. Take inventory of your life. See the things you like to do, the things you want to do, and let's be purposeful about it. And we're going to start small groups around it. So that's how we got started.
Well, how do you get if the directives isn't coming from the pulpit, maybe, or maybe it is, but I know like at the church we were at, every 2 years we got serious about small groups, and then it fizzled out after 6 months, and you got to let it sit for a couple months or a couple years. How do you get everybody on board? We talked about this right before we brought everybody and recorded that small groups is not a problem to be solved, it's the solution to all your problems. So how do you make it go from a program to part of the culture, the DNA, the philosophy, all that stuff?
Yes. So I'm pretty competitive, but so we had our small groups that had been operating, and we had some small groups been together since the earth cooled, and they were just there, right? We started our small group. We started in conjunction with the people who were just kind of going. The church we still had directives. We had every spring, they wanted all the small groups to kind of do the same thing. We knew it was coming. We started in the summertime. We knew the spring was coming, but my goal was by the time the spring got there, we would have a bunch of fired up, excited people passionate about small groups doing all kind of things that by the time the spring got there, we'd have to change the direction. Because I saw what was happening everywhere, and I saw our small groups were suffering, right? And I saw all these other great churches that were doing great things in their small groups. I knew we could get there, but there had to be a culture shift. And I knew the culture shift would come when we start winning, right? When small groups became a winning ministry, then the culture would shift. When Nick Saban showed up to Alabama, we started winning. The fans went from being miserable to being excited, right? And the whole Alabama organization got behind him and said, "What do you need for us to keep on winning?" That's going to be me. I just got to do it in small groups, but we got to start winning. So we had people who were excited about their small groups for the first time, right? Versus doing it because they were told to, and we had some faithful that did that. We got people that were excited about it. We had people that so excited about it that folks that were in the groups that have been there since the earth cooled went, "Well, what are y'all doing over there? We want to be a part of that." So we had people that were joining those. They were starting their own small groups. People who had their own cocoon of small. We had groups that had like 30 people in it, and those 30 people were going to be in there till they died. People literally died in that small group. It was one out of. We saw people that would not leave. They literally.
Somebody died during a small group meeting? Is that
not in the meeting, but they were still part of the small group. They wouldn't let them go, right? They would not let people go. So, but then people started going, "Wow, those folks over there are having a great time. Wow, I just heard John's got a small group, and they're doing what? And then they started, "Well, I want to do that. Can I leave my small group and go do that?" Absolutely. And so we started, and then the culture started to change. By the time the spring came around, we had tripled the small group ministry. And, they're going, "Okay, well, we want to do this whole church-wide thing." And I was like, "Well, we can try, but, I've got this guy over here. He's got a group of guys that are bowling on Friday nights. They're probably not going to want to stop bowling to do a book study on whatever it was we had at the time. Hey, I got these ladies over here. They're taking their kids to the playground. Might not want to stop doing it." So I said, "We can still try. We still have some of these groups that do book studies. What do y'all want to do?" And they're like, "Well, let's just skip it one season." Okay, all right, that's fine. Let's skip it one season, keep going. By the time the next year got around, we had about 300 or 400 groups.
Now, I want to ask a few more questions. Don't let me forget to ask you about freedom groups. Okay, because a lot of what we're talking about is connection and connecting groups and people connecting. There's discipleship going on there. But what we did and what other churches have done with freedom is very freeing and empowering and all that stuff. But I want you to speak to that. A couple of practical things is one, I'm hearing that you had several kind of incremental goals of like, we're going to launch this, but our real launch isn't 9 to 12 months out. And so it was constantly adjusting your expectations and not saying, we're doing this church-wide thing in January and everybody's going to get on board, and it fizzles out just as fast as it starts. It's let's start this. I'm going to be intentional about it, but we're going to work towards this and see how that goes, and then go off with those things. I like that. I appreciate that. How did you go about the small group training of the leaders then, and making sure that everybody was on the same page? I remember there's classes, and you even, I think, had it as a part of the like volunteer orientation on step 4 of the assimilation process, I believe, if my
That's
memory
true.
serves me correct.
Mhm. Yeah, so big step. I mean, we're gonna talk about small group leaders. The small group is solely for the small group leader, right? All right, and that's a fundamental shift in thinking for some people. When they go, I have to have small groups so that I can have people in those small groups. You will have people in those small groups if you take care of the small group leader. All right, they are the soldier that is signing up, that is enlisting, right? They are the ones that's in the army now. The people in the groups, right? They're still the guys, people in the crowd. If this is the football team, they're the ones still in the crowd a little bit. They haven't joined the team yet. They're not taking the licks. They're not put on the helmets yet. The small group leader is the most important part of that group, right? So we need to take care of and value and resource and all those things, the small group leader. So that being said, when we're training the small group leaders, training happens when the group gets going. Okay, I can talk to them, coach them, do classes with them, all those things, but until they hop on the bike and start riding, it's none of the stuff I say is going to matter. I mean, it's not even applicable to their life, the training. So our training started out as, here's everything you could possibly face in small groups. And what we would see is people walking out going, I thought I wanted to be a small group leader. My God, I'm scared to death now. And till we got it to, here's guidelines to get your group started kind of thing. Here's how you can effectively get a group going. And then here's some resources in the back. But the most important resource is, here's your coach, right? Here's your coach. You can start talking to your coach. Your coach is going to be praying for you every day by name, every single day of this small group semester. So if you have things you need to be prayed about, let them know. If you have things that, are going on in your group, let them know. They're not the small groups police. They're not there to go, are you doing small groups right? They're there to support you. They're there to pray for you. They're there because they want your marriage to be doing great. They're there because they want you to have great relationships with your kids. They're there. That's why you have somebody. So I mean, we call them a coach, but they're just ministry leaders for you. Your own personal ministry leader.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we know it is not until the small group leader gets inside the small group and if you've ever run a small group, they're just the fundamentals that happen, the things that happen inside the small groups are the nuances are great. But it's not until that, that couple that's leading their first small group sitting there, and then at the end of it, one of the couple is sitting around waiting for everybody else to leave so they can have that personal one-on-one moment, and they go, you know what, we've just been struggling in our marriage, and we're so glad you're doing this, and but we've got some questions. And the small group leader's going, okay, what you got? Right now that's when they're in the game, and that's when they need instruction. So I don't want to prepare them for things that might not even happen, and that just scares them. I just want to help them get better at what they're actually going to do. So when they have that person that go, I'm struggling, they go, man, look, we coach them on what they can do there. Hey, we're gonna pray for you, and then I'm gonna call my ministry leader. Hey, this is what happened. But what we see a lot of times is God was ready for them, right? God's already been equipping them, and they got them, and they're ready. Most of the time, I know when I say most, 85, 90% of the time, that small group leader catches their first problem, and they go, oh, well, man, you guys, it just sounds like I just need to talk more. But, me and my wife, we've went through the same thing, and this is what happened to us. And man, hey, we're here for you. Call me tomorrow. Let's talk about it again. We're going to be there for you. We're going to help you walk through. right? And that's what happens. And because most people, and we coach our, is what one of the things, hey, most people, they just need to know somebody's there. Most people, they just need to know somebody's rooting for them because they don't have that in their life. Most people, when they're married, when a husband and a wife start talking to people about their problems, they go, leave that dude, or or I've been telling you forever. He's sorry, right? That's what most people hear. But when you're in a small group setting, they get to go, hey, we're for your marriage, right? We're for both of y'all. We're going to be praying for you guys. Hey, call us tomorrow. They just need encouragement, most people. And so when your small group leader goes through it the first time, it helps them flex that muscle a little bit, right? They get better at it. And that's where they're going to get trained, is in the ministry when they're actually doing it. We're all done. We've been in ministry. Most of us, we've probably been in ministry for years, centuries, if we added it all together in this group, right? And you think about yourself and you go, when did I learn ministry? Was it in biblical seminary? Or was it when somebody came to me and said, hey, this is what I'm dealing with? Your small group leaders are going to be the exact same. And I know a lot of times we try to, as pastors, shield them from the hurt that they might face or from the challenges that we went through. But it was those challenges and things that we went through which gave us the muscles to be able to handle more and do better and become better leaders ourselves. So we got to be willing to let our small group leaders go through the same journey we went through, right? And be there for them. And just, man, as long as we're connected with them, I think that's why it's very important they have that touch point. As long as we're connected with them, hey, how's it going? That coach is following up with them on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. Man, just checking on you. How you doing? Everything's going. And they go, man, we had this couple that came through. Oh my God, that was great. Right? That's what makes your leaders stick. I mean, I know one of the questions was, and we see it a lot of times, hey, we have leaders, they come, they show up for a little while, they leave, right? Or they would never get them back. We can't our small group ministries, I've helped dozens of churches now. The small group leaders keep coming back. I don't have to go recruit small group leaders. We didn't have to recruit them. They were recruiting themselves, right? The ones we didn't have to worry about people leaving and not coming back. We didn't mind. We would tell them, hey, take off. And they go, no, yeah. And at the end of the semester, it was funny. It was so fun. End of the semester, yeah, we're going to probably take off next season. Okay, great. Hey, we want you to take off next season. Y'all just take some time for yourself. And then as we're ramping up for the next season, they go, we've been thinking, we're probably going to do this one and this one. And we're not really walking back because that's what they're called to do. They're doing the things they love to do. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, you answered like 10 questions. That was awesome. Let me ask a couple of rapid fire questions, and then I want to get into freedom before we close out. So just short answers on this one. What's the size of most of the groups?
We tell them, and even in the training, as they're attracting people to their group or they're going out, one big fundamental here is we put the burden on the small group leader to put people into their groups. Okay. We don't do church-wide initiatives. We don't do what we will do is create the on-ramp. Hey, it's time to get into small groups. Go small groups. Go. Get to find your small group. Find your small. But we don't physically place people in the groups. We have online directories that we usually use. There's some free ones out there. Smallgroups.church is a free one that people can use, or you might have something on yourself. But we create. We've some different websites. You can put up the list of small groups. I've seen a lot of churches do some creative things to do that, but we put the burden on the small group leader, because this is also the muscle that they need to flex, right? Of getting people into their groups. So with that, they've got, we'll tell them, hey, social media, people in the church, your friends, your network of people that you have around you right now. I mean, you just start reaching out to folks, because if you're doing something you like to do, it's very easy for me to start inviting people to play golf with me or come eat breakfast with me. And it was just people around me. I mean, I had more people who started going to the church because they were in one of my small groups than I probably had people that were in the church that got into my small group.
So what would you say a range of people? I mean, obviously depending on whether it was a Dave Ramsey class, or maybe it was a golfing thing, or maybe, everything in between. Um, the smallest small group, would that be 3 people? The largest small group, 50,
we
100?
would tell people 10 is a good group range. And then the capacity of the leader. I mean, because what you want inside the small group is you want people to make connections. Not everybody's going to make a connection to the small group leader, but they might make connections to somebody in that group, right? So things we would coach them up in is, you want to have about 10 people. But that was
And they're recruiting those
flexible.
people themselves.
Yeah.
What they would recruit those people
And they recruit
themselves.
those people themselves.
Give me the line. I'm gonna be a small group leader,
Mhm.
and because I think a lot of our churches have it. Pastor Melton, I want to do a book study, and I want to lead a small group. You would be very excited about that, and I would say, just tell me who my people are, and I will lead them.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna tell you who your people are real quick. Your people are going to be probably family, friends, co-workers. You got a lot of those?
And so I would say, am I supposed to recruit those people, or can there just be a sign up at the church and you just assign me people?
Oh, no, we're not going to have a sign up, but here's what we want. Is we want you, because I feel like if this is something you want to do, then God's probably going to put people in that group. You agree with me on that?
And then I would probably crawfish and back my way out of it quite a bit, because I don't know. I am okay leading people. I'm not okay recruiting people.
A leader. So when we say small group leader, we've had some churches that call them hosts and things like that, and I understand why, and I get it, and it works sometimes. But a leader attracts people, right? And so one of the functions, as if I'm the church and I've got small groups, I do want to put people in a group doesn't have a leader in it. Okay, so. And a leader, and I believe everybody has leadership ability in their arena, right? I tell you, one of my favorite groups ever was a basketball group, because I had a guy, he came to me, he said, man, I want to lead a small group. And he had been coming to church not that long. I mean, he didn't know. I mean, you could, hey, the story of Daniel, he had no idea who Daniel was, right? But man, he was just fired up about people. He was hungry for God. He loved people. He wanted to he was the kid with the loaves and fish. And here's what I got. What do you like to do? I love playing basketball. So where we go? What a basketball group sounds like. And he started a basketball group. In that basketball group, and I said, hey, so we coached him up, right? Hey, make sure you're praying for everybody in your group every day, right? You touch him, how you doing? Touching base with them. Hey, you find somebody that's talking to you, maybe you take them to coffee, y'all go grab lunch or something. That's what we're doing, just kind of coaching them up, coaching them along. In that group, we saw a marriage get put back together, and that marriage started leading groups. We saw an atheist come to the Lord, and that atheist started spearheading freedom groups, right? We've seen truckloads of guys who would just show up at the park to play basketball with this group that didn't go to the church, started funneling through the church. Okay, and this guy was like, I like playing basketball. What I like to do.
So kind of the last rapid fire question I would have, and then I want to shift gears a little bit. What would be, I mean, if you're saying 10 is kind of like a good range on a small group number, yeah. And we have some churches that are either intentionally micro churches to some churches that are just smaller in size, maybe based on location, proximity, age, etc. Is there a church size that you would say small group ministry doesn't fit in?
One? No, because if you're solo, you can go make your own small group, I guess.
Because it's interesting, a lot of what you're talking about is not your influence inside of a church, it's your influence inside of your world outside of church.
It's what has God created me to do? And let me go put some people around me to do it. And you can do that by yourself. I can start, I've got, which we've done. Start a small group ministry by myself if I wanted to, and grow it, because that is the church. That is, and that's what I love about small groups. Is it? I mean, you look, the New Testament is a bunch of small group leaders who go, I'm fired up. Let me get some people around me, and let's get moving. And that's what they created. Here's what is your giftings, what is your talents, what are you called to be? It's things we want people to walk out in their lives anyway. Nobody wants people to just come show up at church on Sundays and then do nothing with what God has created them to do throughout the week, right? We want people to go, I believe God has this, that made me to created me to be this, wants me to do this. He's given me a passion for this kind of people. We've had, I mean, and then you go, and if God has done that, I truly believe God's going to put people around them to accomplish the task that God has called them to do. The church isn't calling them to do it. The good Lord is calling them to do it.
Yeah.
And if God wants them to do it, he's going to get it done through them. And he's going to put the people around them to get it done, or not put the people. You know, a lot of people get scared about, oh, I don't know if this guy, I got this small group leader and I really don't know if he should be a small group leader. God's God. God's a good God. And he doesn't put people, people that are not supposed to be in that group. I've seen people go to show up at groups and they go, it wasn't for me. That's great. That's fine. I mean, they have the freedom to do that. We give people the freedom to do that. Hey, if you show up and you don't like it, go find another one. Because we want them to connect. We don't want somebody sitting in a small group miserable. Right? We want them to go find some people who have like interests, like mine. I had a guy, this was one of those guys, we all have them at our church. They're just the weirdest person you've ever met, right? They're always up in your personal space, right? They don't have that filter. They're just, we all have that person in our church. And for years, I'm just wondering, oh God, what in the world is this guy made for? Why is he here? What, I mean, other than to be right here and with sweaty palms and wants to shake your hand, and that guy, why? And then found out one day, he was really good at making fishing lures. Loved the church, been there forever, fired up about it, loved people in his own way, but you know, other people, but he was like a genius at making fishing lures. And so I said, let's see if we can get a group around that. And he had about a dozen people in it. And loving for a guy who was just an odd person, out of place, saw him just fired up because people wanted to be around him because of something he was good at.
That's awesome.
And they prayed beforehand, they prayed afterhand. He was talking. It was incredible. That's incredible.
I want you to walk us through freedom, and then I want you to give us some practical next steps on what we can do to after we leave this conversation. What are some things that we can do, resources or next step, anything like that. But I've spoke about freedom real quick. You did as well. Talk to me about freedom and where that was everything seemed like it was kind of a wide net. Talk to me about freedom being deep and what that did with individuals.
Yeah, so freedom gave us a great template to use with our other ministries. We had a lot of freedom to build it, because I think as a church, nobody else understood it, right? So with that came a lot of freedom. With ignorance comes a lot of freedom sometimes. So, and we didn't have a lot of the red tape that comes with building up a ministry. And I say red tape, the spiritual red tape that comes with building up a ministry. But with the freedom ministry, we had to be very intentional. We had to be, there's a lot more.
What was freedom? I don't know if anybody else knows what
freedom.
freedom
So freedom is there's a ministry, and then there's a few different variations of it around the country. But in general, it is everybody has a purpose and a calling from God, right? But most people are so blinded by their past and look through the lens of the past junk, hurts, habits, and hangups, that they can't really see clearly what God has for them in their life. So the intention of freedom is to help people kind of remove that gunk out of their eyesight so they can go, here's who God is, here's what he's created me to do and be, and this is his love for me, and this is who I am to him. And it kind of helps propel them into that purpose of their life.
It could be a very, very spiritually heavy weekend, but freeing weekend as well. When people are coming in and there's the group session that leads up to then the actual freedom weekend, which is kind of like a releasing of some of these hurts, habits, and hangups.
Yep.
What I noticed watching it was a lot of churches want to have worship nights and encounter nights and all these things where the Holy Spirit will just break something off of somebody overnight. And that does happen.
Yep.
But something about the freedom group was a group praying for spiritual breakthroughs, but then also allowing people in small groups where they trust what's happening to open up, to remember, to recall things, to process things. And it was a process of releasing some of those things. And I'm not saying it was all like woo-woo charismatic or anything like that, but it was actually it seemed almost very methodical in letting people process to the point where they could let go. Just telling somebody you need to let go of this hurt, habit, and hang up doesn't work if they need to process why they have that hurt, habit, and hang up to begin with.
It's one of, and this is the craziest thing because it's so deep and it's so powerful. The entire the 12-week, 10-week, however you do it, course, and then the weekend is so powerful, so deep. There's so much things broken off of people, but it's the easiest small group I've ever led that man and our leaders lead, because it's Holy Spirit driven. So, and it's the material is biblically, it's all Bible scripture and with questions that people are processing internally themselves. And so there is literally, they're spending those 10, 12 weeks with God going, here's where I'm at. According to the scripture, here's where I'm at. What are you telling me? And the questions that we're asking in those groups are, all right, so man, what was God speaking to you about in this week? All right, so we've all, none of the work is kind of done inside the group. The work is done outside of the group, and then there's kind of the group is a culmination of, all right, so tell me, how's this week for you kind of thing. So it's a very simple, but in that week, people are really getting stuff stirred up in, right? And so the groups are really designed to break ground so much. And then the weekend is designed to just kind of clean it up. So to the point to where we wouldn't allow people, if they couldn't, we have the weekend planned, right? And somebody says, man, I can go to the group, but we're out of town that weekend. We say, don't go to the group, wait till the next semester, and start then. Because they don't want them to get all these things going on in their life and all this junk start to come up and not deal with it on the weekend. And then just have to hold, and then just it kind of festers and things like that. So they don't want that to happen. So it's very intentional, and we put a lot into it, but it's a very easy ministry to facilitate, in that the Holy Spirit's doing most of the heavy lifting.
Yeah. One last thing before I want you to give us some resources, just very simply, all small groups, whether they're a prayer group, outreach group, moms group, basketball group, the leader is praying for everybody daily, whether they're communicating that or not. They are praying by name for everybody daily. That's the commitment we would ask of the small group leader.
Yep.
They have prayer before and after, whatever basketball event, whatever it is.
Whatever.
Was everybody doing some sort of outreach still, or it was what were the other thing? I felt like there was two other things that
two things that we said, hey, if you would be an unbelievable small group leader, if you do these two things: one, pray for your people by name every day. Two, encourage them to take their next steps. Right? So, and that means identifying where the people are at in your group spiritually and encourage them to take another step. And so, and I would break it down when I talk training, I break it down like this. I go, so for example, if I've got somebody in my group and they were not attending church, what would be a great next step for them? And they would say, and you ever do this, and it's funny, they look around like this and they go, attend church? I go, you got it. What if they're going to church now, but they're not saved? What would be a good next step? They need to be saved. Man, you're doing fantastic. All right, so now they've been going to church, they're saved, they ain't been water baptized yet. You know, can y'all think of what would be maybe a great next step for somebody in that get water baptized? Man, you're so good. All right, so man, they're really good. They've been going to group, man, but they're not serving anywhere. What would be an unbelievable next step? And I'm just giving them I'm softballing it to them, right? But
Yeah.
they're going, I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. So so the image is everybody that's in my small group ministry is getting prayed for every day, and they're all taking another step. So that's the image.
One last question I forgot to ask. This is probably one of the most important questions. What's the pastor's responsibility of leading a small group? Can the pastor say the staff and the board is my small group? Can the pastor say I'm not a small group leader, I'm going to delegate that to somebody else? Tell me what your thoughts are on that.
Pastors. You got two ways to do it. One's fast, one's slow. You get it rolling, it's going to happen, right? Fast way to do it is to be the champion of small groups, right? People come to church to see you as the pastor. They like you. They think you're hilarious. They think you're so wise. They think you talk straight to God and speak straight to them, whatever the reason. So because of that, they're going to do the things that you say do. And they've done studies. As a small group pastor, I could get up and say one thing, I'll get a third of the church to move, versus if the senior pastor gets up and says the exact same thing. Okay. The best way to spearhead small groups, and this is something every pastor, 100% that have done this has absolutely loved it, because it does a couple of things. But I'd say if you're a senior pastor, you need to lead a small group. Don't do any kind of small group. Do something you love to do. Something that you want to do anyway. You love to do it. So I've had senior pastors who lead youth groups. They started out as a youth minister. They missed it. So they started leading youth group stuff. Pastors who did golf and activities and things like that. Pastors who were going, you know what, I'm going through a new kind of study myself. I'm just going to bring some other people with me. It's things I want to learn and stuff. So do stuff you want to do. Here's what it allows you to do. It allows you to reconnect with your church. You remember the time when it was just you and a few people and you loved it so much, right? And most senior pastors, they also remember the time when they would meet somebody who didn't know who Daniel was in the Bible, right? And that fires you up and go, man, I just love teaching people about who Daniel, how important he is, and what he is, and it gives you a chance to do that again, which re-energizes you as a senior pastor. But then it pours out of you on Sunday, right? Because now you're bringing word messages and stuff out of your small group, and you're going, man, so I was talking to a guy in my small group this week, and blah, 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 and that starts to pour out of you. And then your congregation goes, oh, he's in a small group? Man, his small group sounds exciting. I want to be in a small group. He's leading a small group? I want to lead a small group. Because they want to do what you're the leader. They want to do what you do. That's why they're at your church. They do what you say do. They do what you do more than they do what you say. Right? So if you're the small group leader and you're the champion, it's pouring out of you. Your small group ministry is going to explode, versus it will trickle up. It's still going to go. It's still going to work. It's still going to have traction. It just won't go as fast. You can go fast or slow. You're gonna love it if you lead a small group, especially if you lead. Don't do the normal. I'm going to preach again on for an hour for these guys. Do something you love to do.
Yeah. Give us some ways that what would be our next steps, as a group. We have pastors all over the country on this call.
Yep.
Give us some next steps individually, maybe some resources or anything that's coming to mind for you before we jump off.
Absolutely. So you got, holiday season is a great time to start prepping your lead teams, right? Whenever I do anything, I create a lead team around it. And these are my soldiers that are spearheading this thing with me. I want to give y'all some key phrases here. One is going to be funnels, right? So when I'm building a small group ministry, I'm going to create funnels. Funnels are things that we do throughout the year that introduce people to small groups. And I usually do those funnels in stages of men, women, marriage, youth, prayer, outreach, right? And eventually you might do money, but that usually falls under men, women, or you can do all those things too, right? But so I'm going to create funnels. That means if I'm going to build my church around small groups, right? I don't want small groups to just be something that's over there in the corner and I ask on every week at the staff meeting, hey, how are them small groups doing? That ain't small groups. I want small groups to be who we are. I want everybody, we expect, if you're at our church, you're either leading a small group or you're in a small group. That's it. That is it, right? Because if you're not leading a small group, you're not connected. You're just showing up on Sundays and we don't know who you are. We don't know what you're going through. We don't know how your marriage is or how your kids are doing or if you're sick or all those things. Right? We need you in that small group, right? People are still going to get divorced. People are still going to get sick. People, are going to do stupid stuff because we got people, but we rather them do that in a small group because we can be there for them. Okay. So that's our expectation. So with that, I got, I want to get a funnel so that people can go, every time we do something, I champion a small group. Man, we just had men's ministry, blah, 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 blah. Man, if that is you, man, if you got fired up today for what we're doing about men, maybe you need to think about leading a small group. You need a men's small group. Women, man, my God, man, if you just love what we did today, if we have prayer meetings, right? The prayer, man, some of you guys in here today, y'all are going, I could pray for another 5 hours. We need to talk to you. You need to be leading a prayer small group, right? So we create funnels to capture, right? Outreach. Man, we just finished feeding the homeless. Some of y'all are fired up right now, and you want to try to go feed somebody else. You need to be leading a small group, right? Outreach small group. So we're constantly creating those funnels, and we do it very strategically. So for each one of those kind of groups, we do that throughout the year, so that we can collect names, information of people who have potential to lead small. It's in them. It's somewhere in there, right? Now, I need to know who those people are because my job now is to help bring that out. I want to get it out of them and I got to get them moving. I got to get them into the team. Okay. So there's one, funnels. The second thing is, where'd it go? I don't know. Pretty good though. I do that a lot. I have some great stuff.
Any websites that we can look at, podcasts?
Yeah, so we have quite a few things. Websites. I think me and you talked about it, Tim. I gleaned a lot from Pastor Chris Hodges down at the Grow and
Grow Leader, Church of Highlands.
Absolutely. Yeah. We have proximity, so that helped with them. But if y'all do something like that, they are a huge resource. Wear them out, right? I have never been afraid to make asks when it comes to the kingdom, or when it's you're doing something people like to do. So what I found out for them is one, they love helping other people, and two, they're doing it for the kingdom as well. So I got every piece of information they could give me, every question, every nuance. Them. We had some guys. I've been to a bunch of these conferences, and so I've kept networks. We have a large network of small group pastors around the country that we're plugged into. So I would encourage you, find a network, get plugged in with them. There's a lot of things that people are doing that are working well. Take the best, leave the rest, kind of thing. And then, we've got our Multiplying Christian Impact small group, that thing that we do on Facebook group, and you can get plugged into that, Multiplying Christian Impact. We have a ton of resources and things in there, everything from building from scratch, a small group ministry to a individual small group, and training that leader.
So two things I would say as we get off. One, if you want to reach out to Melton, I'm going to speak for him. If you want to reach out to Melton, you can do it through that Facebook group. Look up Multiplying Christian Impact.
Yeah.
Multiplying Christian Impact. And it should be the first thing that comes up if you're into Facebook, which I think age-wise, I think everybody should be.
Oh yeah, no, we're all
Facebook. In that. But the second thing is he mentioned Grow Leader. The Wesleyan Church was given quite a good amount of tickets for that, and there's oftentimes hard to get to the actual Church of Highlands in Alabama, but they're doing regionals: Houston, Texas, February 9th, Indianapolis, March 7th, Fredericksburg, Virginia, which a lot of us know about, March 9th, and Minneapolis, Minnesota, March 14th. And so if any of those places are close to you, I'll be at all those places, but you can reach out to me and I can hook you up with some tickets for that if you want. It'll just be a little bit deeper dive on some of these things as well. A little bit different perspective, but kind of the same value system of a church of small groups instead of a church with small groups. I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank Melton. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to do this. I know you're a Kingdom guy, so I really, really appreciate that. And the fact that you would do it for free when we probably would owe you about $3,000 for that. I really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much.
Absolutely love this. And you're going, and I get excited knowing that y'all are about to embark on some things, because I know what's going to happen inside your church. I just absolutely know the weight that you carry of wanting more leaders and wanting your people to grow at faster, at a better rate, and wanting to reach more people in the community, and I know the weight and burdens that y'all carry and pray for. I've never seen a more effective tool for accomplishing all those things than small groups. Never, ever. So I'm excited for you. I'm very excited.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great day.